right, Sandy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me a little bit about, your experience when it comes to the con artist and the bigamist. Um, and you know him as Rick, right? But
Correct. Yes.
several other women met him under different names. So I'm gonna just let you kind of tell your story a little bit. I know you shared a lot of your story already on Love Fraud, and a lot of the listeners who are familiar with the show would have seen you on that show and would have seen kind of your experience, which I think involved a lot of trauma because you did have kind of this physical altercation with him. You were able to testify about that before the court, and maybe even some of them can relate to that, and that the bravery that you showed in doing that and in confronting him over what happened to you. But I kind of just want to take it from the start, in the beginning of your relationship with him, and more or less just ask you, where were you in your life? Like, what kind of headspace were you in? What was going on with you when you first met Rick?
Before I met Rick, I was in property management, the apartment business, and I was doing well. I've been in the apartment business for so long and had a lot of success. And I was at quite a large property and was having success there, enjoyed my job, and was just confident with my life, my friends, my family, and what I was doing. And one day, Rick walked in and he had this kind of aura about him, a little confidence. And he was in the corporate housing business and wanted to rent a couple apartments from our property and then fill it with, the furniture, the furnishings, everything, so that somebody coming into town for a short-term stay could just drop their suitcase and come on in. And so our company rented his company a couple of apartments. And so I knew of him, and had a business relationship with him for about 4 to 6 months. And a good relationship, nothing, there was no red flags or anything like that. One day he asked if I wanted to go out, and I was like, oh no, I felt kind of uncomfortable. I didn't want to mix business with that. Well, fast forward a couple months later, one of our business associates that I worked with, she was going to quit the company, and she was going to have a going away party at a certain restaurant bar. And so a bunch of us went, and he happened to be there. And so just kind of talked with him. We had a great time. Everybody had a great time with him. And then one thing happened that we just happened to be the last couple there, and we just kept talking and talking. And I said, well, I got to get home. I got to work tomorrow. So he followed me home to make sure that I got home okay, which I thought, well, that was great. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Mhm.
And so a couple days later, he asked if I wanted to go to lunch. I thought, okay, lunch is safe. And so we went to lunch, had a great time. And then he asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. So we did that. And then, it just eventually started, we started dating, and he was great, but very gentlemanly, opened the car door for me. I thought, gosh, this doesn't happen, hardly anymore. And he was just a real gentleman. And so then eventually my family met him, and I had a niece that was playing soccer at the time in high school. So I kind of drug him to a game, and he met my family there. And then just kept dating. And there was one time that we were supposed to go to St. Louis. He asked me to go to St. Louis just for an overnight trip, and he wanted to go early in the morning. I said no, I've got responsibilities at my job, and I've got a couple people moving into my community, and I had to make sure that the apartments looked okay. And he got angry that I wasn't dropping everything that I had and didn't want to go to St. Louis with them. And I saw a little bit of an attitude there, and I thought, okay, I just kind of brushed it off. Maybe he's just disappointed. And I said, well, you have a, obligation at your job, and so do I. And I'm sorry, we can go a different time. So So that was that. And then we became engaged eventually. And well, before that, he said, "Hey, Sandy, I think you you really don't have to work, and I make enough money that why don't you just come and be with me?" And I mean, he drove the Cadillac, he flashed a nice watch, had great clothes. And I thought, okay, well, so we kind of moved in together, and I quit my job, quickly got bored in 2 weeks, and I actually kind of did some marketing for him for his company. So I was back working again. He actually gave me a paycheck, took taxes out, saw all that. So I thought, okay, nothing, no big deal. And we got engaged. And as soon as we got engaged, that's looking back now, that's kind of when things turned. He started kind of isolating me from my family. Now, I come from a family that is extremely close, great parents, a great sister. I don't have kids. I've never been married, but always spent a lot of time with my family. But I saw little things where, oh no, we're not going to such and such town. We've got things to do here. I said, well, we had plans. Well, we'll go another time. And just started the isolation part. Well, who are you on the phone with? I'm on the phone with my sister. And just little things like that is where it started looking back,
Mhm.
which I thought was not normal. I've never had a person that I've dated before do that to me.
What, if anything, did he tell you about like his past relationships? Like, did you guys ever talk about girlfriends he had or if he had ever been married before?
He told me that he had never had kids and that he's never been married before.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, okay, when I met him, he was in his mid 40s, early 40s. I was in my early to mid 50s. And I thought, well, hey, I can't judge because I've never been married and I don't have kids. So I thought, well, he's one in a million because you don't find that too often. So I really didn't think anything about it. He just told me that he dated before, that he had one fiance that passed away after having surgery, and that he had dated before but just never got married. And he just said things just didn't work out in those relationships, which when he asked me about mine, or I offered the information, I told him the same thing, just things didn't work out for whatever reason. And so we kind of had that in common. So he we just kept dating, and I didn't think anything about any past relationships.
And when you were together, did he ever go on trips by himself or was he mostly with you all of the time? It's what's crazy to me. And the reason why I'm asking this question too is like, you're watching the show and you're like, when did he have the time,
Right.
to do what he was doing, to initiate new relationships a lot of times when he was in a relationship. So I don't know if that was the case with you, if he actually did initiate anything or had anything he was maintaining with somebody else at the same time. But was there anything like that happening when you were together?
you know w- he would be on the phone a lot, and we would go out to dinner, and we might be sitting either at the table or at the bar, eating our food, and his phone would ring and he's like, oh, it's a business call, I got to take this, or hey, I got to take this. And he'd go outside, which I thought, well, great, because it is rude to talk in a restaurant. And a lot of places don't like that. So I thought, okay, he's being courteous and he's going to take the call outside. And so he'd come back in, but he would do that a lot. I thought, gosh, well, and corporate housing is can be a very busy uh profession. And he told me he was the CEO of the business. So I thought, well, and I knew that the business was generating a lot of traffic with people wanting to rent his apartments. And I've been on that side of the business before, and it can be very busy and it's a lot of hours. It can be. But and if you're trying to drum up business, you're working extra to gain business. So you build your clientele or repeat business, I should say. Anyway, so I didn't think anything of that. Um, he would, when we lived together, he would say, "Hey, I've got to go to Houston or Atlanta." He told me he had apartments in Atlanta, Houston, and Dallas, and somewhere else. So he said, "Hey, we're having issues. I've got to go take just a couple days and go down there and see all about it." I'm thinking, doesn't he have people down there? He's like, "Oh, I got to go take care of this." So then he would come back. And so in the meantime, I'm working for him too because I'm trying to drum up business in a different city.
Mhm.
And so I had my thing going on, and I would call him, he would call me, he would text me a lot. And then it got to the point where if I didn't answer his text right away, "Well, where are you at? Why aren't you calling me?" "I'm busy. I'm talking to a potential client." So that I noticed too, looking back. I thought, this is just weird. Why just, take a chill, dude. I mean, I
Mhm.
can't be at your beck and call all the time. And so, but he'd always come back from his alleged business trips. And I didn't think he was seeing anybody. I didn't find anything in the apartment to allude to the fact that there was other names. I never saw pieces of paper with another woman's name and phone number on it. I wouldn't see any weird stuff that he would bring back from an alleged business trip that would give me a red flag like, okay, who's that? And where is she?
Right. And so finally, when you decide I'm going to marry this man, things kind of took a turn for the worse. Like you described, things changed after you got engaged.
Yes, he became even more controlling. And there was a time that, well, at the time when we were engaged, my mother was very ill with cancer. And I he wanted to get married soon. And I said, "Look, you have to understand." I said, "I am also dealing with, my mom has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. My mom is my priority right now. Sorry to tell you that, but you're going to have to get over that. And I want my mother well." And we were doing everything we could. God bless her. She made it after being diagnosed almost 4 years. It eventually passed away, and that was rough. But at the time, we were dealing with chemo and radiation, and she eventually had surgery. But anyway, so he wanted to get married right away, and we were in another city for a business trip because I had landed a major meeting with someone that I thought was going to help our business explode. And so we went, um, well, a couple days before that, my mom was having chemo, and my sister said, "Hey, I'm coming to town with her, and why don't you and I have, a bite to eat across the street while she's getting chemo?" And so I invited him. And he goes, "Well, I'm marketing right now. I'm out and about." I said, "Well, if you don't feel that you want to get away, hey, and if you're on a run here, by all means keep going, and it'll be just my sister and I." And then he said to me on the phone, "What, you don't want me to come? You don't want me to come?" I said, "What are you talking about? That is not it at all." And then that was another thing. He would turn words and make you feel guilty. And so eventually he came to the restaurant, and he came in and created such a scene. My sister said, "You and I are going outside." They went outside, and my sister mixed no words with him and said, "Under no circumstance will you ever do that again. And do not treat my sister like that." And just nailed him and said, "Look, this is not going to happen again." So came back in, and she eventually had to go get my mom, and then he calmed down, and I said, "Don't embarrass me like that again, coming in here to a public place."
Mhm.
So then we went out to dinner that very same night at a really nice restaurant in that same city. And coming out of the restaurant, he brought up again. I said, let's not talk about it. We're over and done with it. And then he kind of grabbed my arm. And I said, you need to just do not grab me like that again. We got in the car and we went back, and we were staying at one of our corporate apartments at the time that we had. Well, um, that night we had the TV on, we were laying in bed, and he brought it up again. I said, we're over and done. Let's just move on. Let's just move on. And his voice escalated again. And he said, do you want me to leave you alone? And I said, yes, please. I just want to go to bed. We got an important meeting the next day or 2 days after that. And let's just have a good day tomorrow. And I closed my eyes, and I will never forget. I had this just gut wrenching feeling that he was just staring at me, and that he was going to like take a pillow and suffocate me or punch me while I'm not looking. I just had that weird feeling. Thankfully, it didn't happen. So I thought at that moment, I'm like, you know what? I am not having a good feeling. There's just things that are happening. I'm not happy. So I started in my mind, okay, I got to get my stuff out of the apartment, the back in the other city we were grounded at. And how am I going to get the stuff out of there? Because my name was not on the lease. And since I'm in this business, there's a whole realm of things that you can and cannot do, really. And my mind started turning, like, I got to get my stuff out when he's not there. I got to have my family. We're just going to start throwing things in a truck. I'm not even going to pack. We're just going to start throwing things in. So I was thinking in my mind, okay, this and this and this is what I got to do. Fast forward the very next night. We are in a hotel room, and we checked in. We both looked at our emails. We went downstairs to the bar, and we grabbed something to eat and something to drink, and then just back and forth, and we started talking with people beside us. It was a very professional setting at this really nice hotel. And one guy said, well, hey, can I see some pictures of your apartment? So I went up to get the iPad, bring it back down, and we were showing him pictures. And he's like, wow, I'd rather do that than stay in a hotel all the time. And so a little bit of time went on. I had gone to the ladies' room, came back. When I come back, he was using four-letter words by the window, and I could hear him thinking, oh my God, what is wrong with you? So then he comes over, and I said, you need to tone it down. We're in a professional setting here. And he said, flipped up both one fingers to me in front of anyone who could see in here. F you, Sandy. F you. And thinking, that's it. I went to the front desk, and I said to the assistant manager, I'm thinking through I said, can I have a key to this room? She said, yes. I almost said to her, if anything happens to me tonight, it's going to be because of Rick Smith. And I didn't say anything, probably because of out of pride and embarrassment, but I almost said it. Next thing you know, I go upstairs and I start gathering my stuff. And I realized I had left my purse with my keys and everything down at the bar, and went down to get it. He was sitting in the seat. I acted like I didn't see him. I grabbed my purse, went back upstairs to the room to get my other belongings, and he came up and he said, I love you, Sandy. And I said, I'm leaving you. And he stepped in front of me. I said, you better get out of the way. I need to leave. He goes, nope. And I said, you better step back. And I went for the door, and that's when he pushed me down on the bed. And he grabbed my arms, my wrists, so that I couldn't move. And I said, you better get off me or I'm going to start screaming. And I tried for the phone, and I couldn't, he grabbed my arm again, and because I gotten it away a little bit, and he grabbed me, and he was just on top of me with his legs on my arms like I couldn't move. And I said, you better get off me. I'm going to start screaming. I'm giving you one last chance. And he wouldn't do it. I started screaming bloody murder, like, help, help me. And um, then eventually he pinched since he had his legs on my arms, then he took one hand and pinched my nose. And then he took the other hand and he covered my mouth so I couldn't breathe. And I thought, this is it. I'm done here. I am done here. What am I going to do? What is my family going to do? So I don't know how this happened. I just kind of pressed my head in the back of the bed so hard, as hard as I could. And I had enough, a little bit, to turn my head so fast, and I bit the side of his hand so hard as I could. And he said, you bitch. And he got up off the bed, and I went for the door to get out, and he caught me again and threw me down on the floor. And then he started kicking my back, and I'm screaming, thinking, why is no one coming to help me? Why is no one coming to help me? And it seemed like an eternity. Why can't anybody hear me? And so then I'm still screaming, curled up in a little ball in this room. And then he took the iPad that had the OtterBox covering, the hard covering on the edges,
Mhm.
and he started wailing me on my head. He's beating me on the head, and I was having my hands over my face so that I could sort of see what he was doing, because I wanted to cover my eyes and my nose so he wouldn't break. The whole time I'm thinking, please don't let him hit your eyes or your nose, and don't pass out, because then he's going to finish you off. And I just screamed at one point, you are going to kill me. And he kept going at it for a few more moments, and then I don't know what happened. He just suddenly quit. I don't know if his hand was killing him from me biting him, and he left the door. He left the hotel room, and my head was hurting so bad. My head was hurting so bad. I thought, I was going to come back in. Do I go out of the room? Is he going to wait for me if I go down the steps? What do I do? All I could think of was to dial 0, the front desk, because I couldn't even think of 911. And I said, they answered, and I said, please have the police come. I've just been beat up in this room. Please hurry. And the police did get there really fast.
Mhm.
It was a nightmare. I mean,
It's horrifying. I mean, I can't even imagine. And to be by yourself and feel like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this situation? It's crazy because, up until that point, he had never done anything like that to you, but
no,
it seems like he decided,
snapped.
yeah, it's like he just snapped.
And I tell you, when the police came, they said, do you want to press charges? I said, yes, to the fullest extent. And I just want to say that no matter how much you may love the person, or think you're in love with the person, or that that there's no way out, there is. And um you can press charges and make it happen, because I was not going to let him do that to me ever again. There was no way I was going to turn back. There was no way I was going to stay with that guy. No way. If they do that to you once, they're going to do it again, because if you go back with them, then they know they have you. They know they've got you. they're in control. And I'm like, there's no way that that guy is going to ever be in control of me again, because I started losing myself by being with him, and I wanted to get myself back. And I pressed charges, and they found him that night. And he spent the night in jail, and that's a whole nother thing on the backside. But you know, I spent, by the time he was arrested to the time he finally was put in jail because he violated his probation with my case, it took 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It took 3 agonizing years. And there was a couple times I thought I was just going to, there was he where he wouldn't show up in court and things like that. I thought, how is he getting away with this? How is he getting away with not showing up? And he'd give bull crap stories why he couldn't come to court. And there was a couple times I almost gave up, and I thought, no way, he is not getting away with this. I'm gonna win. He is not.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to see this thing through. And so I did, and at least he spent 6 months in jail, which was not enough as far as I'm concerned, but at least it was something.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly brave of you too, that you decided you weren't going to let it go. You weren't just going to move past it. You were going to hold him accountable for what he did. At what point, though, after this happened between the two of you, did you find out that he had been lying to you basically your entire relationship? He wasn't who he said he was. Um, and you kind of discovered that there were all these other women that existed. Um, when did that happen for you?
Well, the night I was actually assaulted, as a matter of fact, I was down in the manager's office of the hotel, um, speaking to the police officers. And one of them said, hold on, I got to go take this call. And then he came back and he said, so you said you're engaged to him? I said, yes. And he said, well, we just got a call from another woman named Jean who said she's his wife. And at that moment, I thought, oh no, because one of the employees that was with the corporate housing business that he was in, her name is Jean, and she was the CFO, and we had never met. I know that sounds odd. I just, it's odd, I know, but we had never met. And I put that together. I thought, I wonder if that's the Jean from the business. And so she's on the phone, I guess, to the police, saying there's no way this could happen because I'm married, and how can there be domestic assault? I'm his wife. Who is this person?
Mm,
Well, I had talked to my sister that night. I don't even know what time it was. By all this time that it happened, it was like after midnight. And I couldn't even think of my sister's phone number. My head was like, just so it hurt. And I was in shock. I had adrenaline going. And finally, I talked to her and I said, hey, Rick just beat me up. And she said, what? And so her husband eventually got up out of bed, and he opened up his computer and started looking at stuff and found the blog.
hmm
And that's when he saw all this other stuff and saw about other people being, you know, victims of his, or other women that he had done wrong to. And that's when I found out. And so eventually, I mean, I did go to the hospital, and had a bunch of bruises. I did have a concussion, and face looked pretty good, but thankfully, nothing more severe. I'm glad of that. It was just, but where is he? What's he doing? And immediately I got a protective order against him. And so that's when, um, oh my gosh, it took from that time, it took another almost 10 months later, I got this call. And through the blog, through the gal that is in charge of the blog, she said, Sandy, there's this woman who wants to talk to you. And I said, who is it? And she said, it's Jean. And I thought, what? And so for some reason, I thought, okay, it's going to be okay to talk to her. And so we talked for about an hour. Long story short, she told me how sorry she was, that she didn't believe or that she believed his story, that he called her. She came up from, well, the city that we're in now, went up to Des Moines and got him out of jail. He told her some cockeyed story that I had two brothers that beat him up um in that bar. Well, first of all, I don't have any brothers. And there was a camera in the bar which showed, I told the detective, pull that camera. That is not the truth. So they did. So his story was not, you know, corroborate. It didn't suffice there. And so she bailed him out of jail, and she was married to him. And they, so backing up, she told me that, let's see, Labor Day weekend of that year of 2015, she and Rick went to Las Vegas and got married. That she and him were dating the same time that we were, and we both didn't know it. And 3 days later, after they came back from being married in Las Vegas, was 3 days later when he beat me up.
Wow.
And prior to that, he said, let's get married, and was just pressing me on it. And I said, no, I'm not going to. My mom is not well. And so she said, well, he told her that, my brothers beat him up and that she believed him. And she said in the police station, it said Richard Smith is in there for domestic assault. I said, why wouldn't you believe that on in the police station when it had it up on the board, why he was in there? She said, I don't know. And then he became very controlling. And that's why I got out. And I want to tell you how sorry I am that this happened to you.
Wow.
And so for, gosh, the next year we became our own little detectives and our own little paralegals. We got all this information on him, and it was absolutely mind blowing. It was mind blowing enough to hear about all this and see the blog after I was beat up. I'm like, how can I not see that? How can I not know that? But he
I
was
mean,
slick
hindsight
and
is
he was smooth.
2020. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I just think for you, now you can talk about it and you can say, yeah, that was weird, that he was taking these calls outside the restaurant, or that he was
Yes.
taking these trips where it seemed unnecessary that he had to, or some of his behavior that now looks controlling. But in the moment, I don't know that it did feel that way or that it would even be that obvious. Um, and it's not just you, obviously. You have plenty of other women who he was kind of manipulating the same way and probably feel just as you do, where they're like, how could I have not seen it then?
Right. And when you do get older, or I mean, even younger, I mean, you can date people that have maybe weird habits or do things that kind of annoy you a little bit. But nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. But you kind of learn to, oh, that's just his personality, or, oh, he just does things like that. That's just him, but I love him. And I tell you now, I look at every flag. I went out on a date with somebody, Well, after that happened, and we went to a restaurant, and he asked me, why I've never been married. And, I told him that I was assaulted by my last fiance. And you know what he said to me was, well, that happens sometimes. Oh my gosh.
That's a red
So
flag.
he
That's a
had
no.
just told me that he had a woman that he was seeing in Chicago, that they had a place together, that when he came back from a business trip, all her things were gone in the dead of night. He told me that. And then for him to tell me, oh, that happens sometimes, I said, that's it. So I got up. I went to the front desk of the restaurant and I called an Uber.
Mhm.
And I never went back to the table. And I was waiting up there, and he comes and looks at me, and there was a whole lot of people in that lobby waiting to be seated for dinner. And I said, get away from me. Don't you ever, ever call me, ever lose my number. I will never see you again. And I just embarrassed him in front of everybody. And they were just looking at me like, what happened? And I said, red flag right there. That guy, yeah, no. And I felt empowered. I thought, that was one. And then I had a date recently with another guy, met him at the restaurant, and he just couldn't believe everything was going well. We had a lot of things in common, so much in common. And all of a sudden, on a dime, it turned that he wanted me to go home with him, and I said no. And he was appalled that I would not go home with him that first date, and that other women just thought they were so drop dead over this guy. And I said, well, you know what, you better get over yourself, so we're done here. And I just got up and left.
I think you've learned a really harsh lesson in your experience with Rick, but
Yes,
I do
yes.
think that it's made you much more aware of those red flags. And so whoever it is you give your trust to next, like they're definitely going to have to earn it. I mean, you're going to definitely, I think, see things now that maybe you wouldn't have before. And it's a harsh, harsh lesson. And the way you learned it, obviously, I wouldn't wish that upon any woman, but you've come out really empowered by that experience. And I think that at least is a victory for you.
I would totally 100% agree with that. I do feel empowered, and I feel so much more sure of myself. And ladies, you're listening out there, no person is worth demeaning you, assaulting you, and then saying they're sorry and give you flowers the next day. That is just not going to work. Just run away from that really quick. I don't care if you are in a relationship that just started, you're in the middle of it, or you've been in this for a long time. You are so much more worth it than anybody treating you like this, because just run as fast as you can. And if you don't think that you don't have any help or support, you do. Find a friend, a family member, go to the church, a coworker, somebody that you can trust, and get out of the situation, because do not ever put your life in danger, and to the point that you're not going to have a life anymore, because it's not worth staying with a person like that. You need to be happy. I'm so much more happy now than I ever have been, because I'm control of me. I have self-worth, and so do you all out there. And you are worth it, and he's not.
Absolutely. That's a great message to share. And I also love that you decided to take your story even more public when you went on Love Fraud and you agreed to be on there. After that experience, I mean, you saw how the show ended.
Yes.
Obviously, if you watch the four-part series, the last episode, kind of at the end, we hear from Rick himself. And at the time, he's serving time. I believe this was for the probation violation, right?
Right.
And this was for um the charges related to your case, or was this because of the identity theft charges? I know that one of the other women brought against him as well. So I can't recall which one it was.
And this was due to the probation violation of my assault case from Iowa.
Okay, so he's serving
And
time for that at the end of the series.
yes,
Um,
and that was where the interview was being held, from the Polk County Jail in Des Moines, Iowa.
okay. And I know that also in that last episode, you spoke before the court and you said, kind of what you felt about him. And you just said very plainly, he's a psychopath. He is the worst kind of person. And he kind of just sat there really stoically. He didn't really seem to react much, but he did decide to share his feelings or at least his perspective with the filmmakers at the end of that series. And I'm curious to know kind of what your reaction to that was. I mean, he says things during that interview that are just wild when you take into consideration everything he's done, not just against you, but, so many women. He couldn't even remember how many he had been married to. He wanted to admit to five. And then when they started kind of rattling off names, he's like, oh yeah, her too. He was just so flippant about it. But one of the things he says is that, he still believes in a fairy tale romance and, he just wants to love someone and someone to love him. Um, and then he gets asked, whether or not he thinks someone can be emotionally conned, not just conned of like their money or a belonging, but, emotionally conned. And he's like, no, not really. And I thought that was such an interesting question because I don't know that he necessarily, if you are one of the women where he conned you financially, I don't know if he took any money from you. I don't believe that is the story you have with him necessarily, but he definitely saw, the love that you had for him and he manipulated that and he used it against you. And I would say he probably, if you had to say, did he emotionally con anyone? I think he definitely emotionally conned you. So, what's your reaction to some of the things he said, and then kind of whether or not you can be emotionally conned?
I think you can. I think I was. And the, looking at that interview in the jail, he was just, I just sat there and went, look at him. I don't even know him. Obviously I didn't even know him from the very beginning. You now that I think about it, I didn't know who he was. He was somebody so different, two two totally different people. And the things that he was talking about, he didn't want to take any blame for what he did. And just being with him at the end and then seeing that interview, I just looked at him and it just gave me the biggest creepy feeling. The first character that came to my mind looking at him in that interview was Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Mhm.
And and I said, that is who he is right there. He's so far gone psychologically, and he's such a sociopath. And if anyone, if you want to look up the 12 ways or 12 reasons you're dating a sociopath, Google that, because I could check mark all of them once I looked back on that. And like I told the judge, I said, if you want to put number 13, that's Rick Smith. Rick Smith right there. And he's gone by different names, I found out. And so I just looked at him and he had like, there's a person that was sitting there, I know, in that interview, but there's no soul in there. It's empty. It's deep and dark and dismal, and anything that he was saying, I don't believe a word he says, because there were holes in his story everywhere. And after the fact, and when Gene and I were getting information on him back then, there was so many holes that I don't believe a word he says. Zero. And please, if somebody runs across this guy, run as far away as you can. Don't get near him. He's dangerous.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention is the fact that we're talking about him and obviously we're kind of sharing your story and your experience with him, but in the grander scheme of things, it's not like he's because of everything he's done as a result of what he did to you or these women, he's like this bad guy that's been put away and he's not out, you know. He at the end of the series, you see he's, you know, with another woman at the end of that series. And I think he maybe just has moved on and he's out there and
Yes,
he's still fully capable and likely still repeating that same behavior, that same manipulation. Um, and so it's sad, but
it
it's not
is.
even just him. There's a lot of men that are like him, right? And so maybe
Absolutely.
just watching that and hearing some of the things you said, you know, might even trigger someone to think, hey, like I've put a lot of love and trust into this guy who I'm dating or who I'm about to marry. But yeah, there might be some things that don't sit well with me, right? And so I think
Right.
one of the messages that you've shared today is trust your gut, right? Like just if you think there is something going on, trust your gut. And I talked to Carla too, and I asked her, well, what do you think, you know, what do you think you would say to a woman about red flags or what to look for? And one of the things she said, and I thought was great too, was you know, can we just do a background check? Right? Like just can we
Oh,
just
yes.
can we just get a background check done and make sure that
Uh,
this guy who's telling you his name is, you know, John Smith, that his name is John Smith, right? That that's really his name. Or where he said he was born, that's really where he was born. Or, you know, just those really simple things that after the fact, you're like, wow, like how would I have known that? I didn't know that he went by multiple names. I didn't know that he would use all these different social security numbers. I didn't know that, you know, there was all this information out on there because I didn't know him by that name. So, yeah, I think that's a really, really, really important message to share. Um,
Absolutely. Carla was such a godsend to us, and she did a lot of work for us, um, out of the goodness of her own heart. Um, and we thank her and the others that actually caught him in Tennessee and arrested him there because the state of Kansas had him listed as a fugitive at the time, and that was due to the other case of the fraud and stolen identity case here. And so they found him in Tennessee, brought him back to Iowa, and that's when he served time for my case. And then after his time was over, they transported him down to Kansas City, in the metropolitan area, where he did this identity theft thing to another one of the girls.
mhm,
And the court, um, yeah, he was listed as a fugitive, but because of a certain judge, and he was in violation of his probation there. The judge said that all he would give him is another 18 months worth of probation. And so he never served one day in jail because of that case. And we were furious.
mm,
So the system failed us there. We were all furious. And so there's other things that have failed us. The bigamy. He's a bigamist, and the courts don't care. They have better things to do. They want to go out and look for murderers and drug dealers, and I get that they're terrible people. But it's the court system can be very frustrating at times. And but at least with mine, I didn't give up, and at least I got some time on him. But yeah, Carla, she is amazing, and she and I to this day are really great friends. And she said, Sandy, if you ever start dating a guy, you better call me first and I am going to look him up. I said, agreed, agreed. I will, I promise.
Yes, definitely
So,
take her up on that. She's great
yes,
and she will.
yes.
She's got your back. Are there any of the other women that you stay in contact with too?
You know, for a long time we did. The gal that started the blog, Lisa, and unfortunately, one of the women that he did that he took advantage of, Michelle, bless her soul, she has passed away since.
Mm.
And then I stayed in contact with Sabrina, and also through the phone, I talked to Michelle. She was the gal on the show that he she had an occasion. Well, I shouldn't say an occasion. She fell on her wedding day and had her wedding dress all bloodied, and she had staples in her head. We talked for a while, and she is since married and has a great life now, and I'm so happy for her. And you know, Jean, like I said, we stayed in contact for a long time after what happened to us, and I haven't talked to her in a while since. But and then Tracy, she was after me, and Sabrina was after me, so we had stayed in contact for a while. And you know, everybody kind of goes on about their busy lives, and I haven't talked to those women in a while, but I wish them well and hope they're happy. And but yeah, if, like you said, Denise, if there's any red flags, if you trust your gut, please trust your gut. If you get those little quivers in your gut, it's right. Just walk away. Walk away. It's
Hmm.
only going to progress from there if you stay. Don't stay. I
Well,
don't care
I,
if the guy is rich, poor, has a great job, has this great house, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. Those are just things, and you need to be happy. Just walk away, trust your gut.
well, I'm so glad that you took the time to actually talk about this. I know that, when Love Fraud came out, you were probably inundated with talking about it. It's been a little bit of time since the docu-series came out, but just revisiting kind of really painful memories, especially something as traumatic as what you went through, it's hard to do. It's hard to
It
revisit
is.
that. It's hard to talk
It
about it.
is.
I can still hear kind of that pain in your voice, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad that you've come out of this experience and you're just so strong, and wanting to move forward and just kind of putting what happened between the two of you behind you. And not just that, but forming like this alliance that you did with these other women and saying, I am not going to let him get away with this. I'm going to put his face out there. I'm going to help get his name out there. I'm going to try to stop him from doing this to other women. Um, I think that's amazing. So, but thank you for taking the time to talk to me about it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And just one last comment. If you think you're too scared to say something because you feel that he's going to hurt you, like I said before, there's go just get away, write somebody just a note. If you're out at a restaurant, you know, put it on a table, please help me, you know, anything to get away, and don't be embarrassed. You know, I felt a little bit there. I was scared, humiliated, embarrassed, all those feelings wrapped up. Um, Thought, do I want to go on this docu series? And I thought, yes, I do, because I want to get out the word out. If we could just save one more person from becoming in contact with this person, or if you are experiencing kind of the same thing out there in your lives, you can get help. Just get enough strength. You are worth it. Get enough strength, seek help. You will feel so much better, and you'll get your life back.
Well, thanks, Sandy. Thanks for talking to me. I'm gonna let you get back
Yes.
to your cleaning.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. All
All right,
right.
thank you.
All right. Thank you.